Hey, this is Joe Castiglione, and you're listening to Not Another Sox Podcast. Can you believe it?
Yankees suck! Yankees suck!
Buenos noches, amigos, and welcome to an emergency episode of Not Another Sox Podcast. I am Jack Webster here with our producer, Ian Doran, and special guest, Joe Weil from WEEI. Joe, welcome. Fellas, what the fuck was that today?
Yeah, wow. Joe, pleasure to have you on.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining
Yeah,
us.
let's have some Joe talk before we get into
Little Joe
everything
talk.
here.
Yeah,
This is one of the bigger guests that we've had from Joe from WEI. For people that might not be familiar with yourself, go ahead and let them know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you boys having me. And with Ian, he called into one of my shows this past weekend, so it's nice to be chatting for the second time in a 5-day span. Definitely a shock. Also, what's funny about Ian and I doing this along with you, Jack, it's like, Dustin May got that start. Ian called in during a rain delay, and it was for a game that Dustin May was starting.
That was
Little
Dustin
did we know
May's
at that point that he would end up being a member of the Red Sox, and that would be his last start with the Los Angeles Dodgers. But no, thanks for having me on, guys. It's always fun to dissect this stuff. Obviously, and we'll get into it. What happened at the trade deadline for the Sox was definitely underwhelming, to say the least. But at the same time, happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit, how you got started in your Red Sox fandom, how you got started with WEI, and what you do now.
Yeah, so with WEI, I joined them. It's actually funny. So just to give you guys a little bit of background in my broadcast career. I broadcasted in minor league baseball with the Winston-Salem Dash first in 2016. When I first got out of college, I was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, doing some broadcasting for a company called Learfield. And then I wanted to get into minor league baseball play-by-play. So I started with the Dash, which was a high A affiliate of the White Sox. Did that for 4 years. And then my wife, she's from Beverly. So we ended up moving up to these parts. And now we've been living in Boston for the last 4 years. It's been a blast working for EEI and WBZ. And, I was thinking about going back into minor league baseball full time at one point, but I also then got a chance, as I was freelance doing play-by-play for all these different colleges out here, I got a chance to kind of work my way in doing stats for EEI. And it's cool hearing Joe Castig's voice right off the top, because I was a statistician for him and for Will Fleming. But I had a background of doing, Notre Dame pregame, halftime, and postgame for their nationwide radio network. And I always thought when I got in with EI, I was like, it would be really cool to, be able to do the pre and post stuff at the very least. And Brian Barrett, who got the great job with the Ringer doing the Off the Pike podcast. Once he got that job, I reached out to our boss, Ken Laird, and, I asked him, I said, I'd love to be doing the pre and post stuff, and did a demo. And then the next year, I ended up getting the job, and it's been a blast. To be able to be at Fenway Park and to be able to do this stuff and, get a chance to talk to guys. But on top of that, just take in like the environment of Fenway. It's been an awesome ride the last 3 years. The only thing that has been missing is just a chance to get to enjoy, covering this team and doing, getting a chance to get to experience postseason baseball. Like, hopefully that we, that still happens this year. I'm not going to fully throw out hope of that happening. But
Yep. Sorry. Continue.
At least right now. But it's been really fun doing this the last couple of years, and, just getting a chance to work with Will and Joe in the last couple of years, but our whole crew of people has been really, really fun. So I've enjoyed all of it. And yeah, it's been awesome being back in Boston. I went to BU as well as a student. So, I used to live like right across the street from Fenway Park. And so to be able to be doing this, like, as a profession is like, it's a dream come true.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't realize you had gone to BU. Actually, a friend of the Pod on Lansdowne host, Jake Wallinger, was also a BU grad and speaks highly of it and does broadcasting and writing and sports journalism and such. So funny you went to BU. I feel like, surprisingly, there are a lot of BU grads who are Red Sox fans. Who knew?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you grow up a Red Sox fan?
I did not. I will be totally honest with you guys. I did not. But I'm. It's been so much fun kind of being here and then working, this job and to be ingratiated into the culture of it. And especially, again, just like getting a chance to talk to people like Ian, like after pre and post, especially like, again, like rain delay, like with Ian, getting a chance to talk to people and be in it now 24/7 and like work with Dan Roach at BZ. And like, again, like being able to be at Fenway and getting a chance to meet all these people that have been with the organization for such a long time has been awesome.
So I think this will kind of like lead us into some of our trade deadline talk for today. But I remember I had called in asking about what to expect at the trade deadline and specifically the outfield surplus, right? Because as Red Sox fans, we all kind of have this expectation or this belief that the guys we would have dealt today would have been either one of Jarren Duran or Will Abreu. And my question for you on that day was if there was any reason to believe of the outfielders or of the major league team, if someone other than Jarren Duran or Will Abreu might have been considered a trade target. But obviously, Jarren Duran and Will Abreu are inexpensive. They're both strong performers. And then today, I mean, we didn't really deal much of anyone for anything. But I also remember, and it made me laugh, the call you got after me, and it was a guy who had called in, and he had said, let me know if I'm wrong. I feel like I'm crazy, but Jarren Duran has had 2 okay years, and then
this call I remember so vividly.
You were like 8.5 wins, an 8.5 win player. That's an okay year. He's like, yeah, that's fine. You were like, no, 8.5 wins is more than an okay year for an okay player.
Yeah. You don't have to be an analytic nerd to know what Jarren Duran did last year was very good.
Incredible.
You look at the back of the baseball card and it's all there still.
Well, yeah. and the problem was he was going based on batting average. And I'm just looking it up right now to see if I'm remembering it correctly. I believe he had 279 last year. No, check that, 285. And I think he was saying, sorry guys, let me just put off my background. It was he was saying like, oh, but so he was downplaying even the average part of it, like saying that they hit 270, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I when I do the show, sometimes I love the interactions that I get with the people that call in, but like I have to push back when you say something like that, like an okay year. Dude was an all-star game MVP and all that stuff. So it was definitely memorable to me too, and I'll say the least. I get all these calls. Like that was one, and it was funny because my dad actually was sitting with me in the booth, and so like he was hearing it too, and he's just like, what is this person talking about? So anyway, yeah.
What do you think's the dumbest thing you've ever heard somebody actually call in and say?
That's up there.
What a question.
I was gonna say there has to be a lot. Yeah.
There's definitely. I mean, the text too. In our text line, that I will say that one that recent call was definitely high up there. It's some of the texts that you come in, you just like you look at it and you try to go to it sometimes because people are chiming in, and that's like the point of the show is to get people like Ian, or whomever to call in and give their take on things. But like sometimes you just look at the text and you're just like, okay, I'm not saying that one on air. Like I'm not gonna go there, or they're insulting me, or saying something nice. It's a little bit of everything. I've been getting on the Twitch chat a lot, but especially when I do pre-games, that I look like Adam Jones's child, which I don't know if you guys know who Adam Jones or what Adam Jones looks like on EEI. But there's some pretty. Okay, that's not good.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it together myself, but now that you said it, yeah.
Is that you?
No, that's not me. Yeah, now I'm gonna start doing it though.
Okay. There you go. But no, it's I've got you definitely get some calls. You're just like, okay, I can't believe you're thinking that way. But then there's some stuff that it's a lot of people thinking that way. And honestly, sometimes I find myself almost in a minority opinion on something, even though I'll kind of stick my ground on it, which is interesting for me. And that's where I think the discussions can be actually really fun when you get a chance to like engage with people. Like after the Carlos Narvaez catcher's interference game, we had some really interesting calls. Their perspective on like the Manfred man at second base. And I'm in the minority, I think, on this, and that I actually like it in regular season games. Because I think it moves it along a little bit faster. But a lot of people that were calling in, my producer included, they were against it. So like, I mean, it's kind of fun to have to defend my own opinion on things where I feel like people don't agree with it.
Yeah, Webb, I think you too, you're a pretty big fan of a lot of the changes they've made, the pitch clock, the ghost runner.
Yeah, no, I mean, I worked in minor league baseball too at one point here, so I kind of got to see them. I worked for the Paw Sox and then for the Lakewood Blue Claws down in New Jersey. So like, I remember when they first put in like the pitch challenge system and the ghost runners and everything, and I was like, yeah, you know, this gets me home earlier, so I'm not complaining too much, but it is kind of cool to see, and you see it, you know, with other sports having different overtime rules. I think, you know, 3-on-3 was the best thing that the NHL did for overtime hockey. It actually, you know, lets games be decided, and I think the Ghost Runner kind of does that. Obviously, when you get to playoff baseball in October, you know, you're still not taking away like Nate Eovaldi's 7 innings out of a relief or anything like that either. But yeah, I agree. Speed it up a little bit. It's okay.
I that's where I've stood, and actually, like you, like at my minor league baseball experiences, I think why I got in favor of it initially and have stayed on that stance. Just a very quick story. The first time I ever saw it in action was when I was with the Winston-Salem Dash in 2018. First game that this rule was implemented. We had a guy steal home. He was a pinch runner that they put on second base. And then he ended up getting to third, and our manager, who was actually Omar Vizquel of all people at that time, he ended up telling the guy, hey, you're going to try and steal home. And he stole home. We win the game in a walk-off steal, or that play gets on SportsCenter top 10. So I think that's why I've always kind of been for it. And I yeah, I'll stay in that stance, and I'm glad I got some company though, at least with that.
Yeah. So to get into the events of today.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we do.
We do. 12 and a half minutes. I think
like, what events?
Every time he does this, I'm like, hey, reminder, pal, you chose to do this. You chose this life.
Yeah, this whole operation was my idea. Yeah.
Here's my catalyst question to get us all moving. And Joe, I'd love to start with you. I would love for you to rate today's trade deadline. All right, I gotta start the whole thing over. It's gotta be smooth. Yeah. Take two. If you were to rate today's trade deadline on a batter's count, 3-2, 0-0, what have you, if you were to rate them on a batter's count, what would you rate them?
And now the question I have is, am I the hitter or the pitcher?
You're the hitter.
Hitter. All right. I would say I'd say this is like a 1-ball, 2-strike count. I think that's where I kind of sit on it. They added a bullpen arm. Matz is, he hasn't performed great like more recently, but he's been, he's had a solid year. The walk rates is really good. I think it's at 4%, which is in the 98th percentile. There's stuff you like about that. But I think him on top of Dustin May, you looked at like almost the obvious trade candidates that are out there. Like you looked at any article that was on CBS Sports or ESPN, you were hoping to get at least like one of those guys from a starter or reliever standpoint. And I don't think you necessarily got it. I know the Sox were like sort of linked to Dustin May, but I obviously like shooting from the moon was Joe Ryan, right? And Craig Breslow talked about how there was clearly an effort there, to do what he felt like whatever it could to get Joe Ryan without taking somebody off of the major league roster. And it obviously didn't get done. But somebody like Merrill Kelly, when I saw that graphic on ESPN, show that he went to the Rangers, that felt like a gut punch in a way that, even with the Joe Ryan stuff, I kind of got to a point before John Morosi, said that the Sox were still continuing to go after it. And then we all saw this Fox Sports thing, where they had said that the Sox got it. That was also a gut punch. But with Merrill Kelly, when he got off the board, that hurt in a way, because it's like, okay, that was a realistic target that they didn't get. Charlie Morton was kind of that same ilk. I think Merrill Kelly would have got people more excited than Charlie Morton. I'm pretty sure you guys would agree with that. You'd let me know otherwise. But I just felt like this year they had these aspirations of getting a guy to be in their playoff rotation. And, in playoff rotations, they don't normally go 5 deep. And it's a question mark if he's, Dustin May is ahead of Walker Buehler, who's had a disappointing year. And I think that's the tough part of this day, and the ultimate takeaway is that they didn't really fill the needs that they had in the most adequate way possible, or even necessarily close to that. And so, and from the bat standpoint, we haven't even talked about first base yet either. Now you're sticking with Abraham Toro and Romy Gonzalez, who, to their credit, have done a pretty good job filling that role for who both those guys are. I mean, Romy this year has been better than any other season. Toro, for a time was really doing a nice job. He's kind of fallen off recently, even though he still gives you professional at bats. But I think the ultimate takeaway I have is that this year, more than the last 2 years, it felt like this was a legitimate team. And then you take into account, and maybe this plays into why I felt that way, is that the American League seems so up for grabs, but the Sox were playing their best baseball going into the trade deadline. Like, I tweeted this out, after they won that game on Wednesday against the Twins. 30-17 over their last 47 games, 17-7 in July. They're 8 games above 500 for, they're tied. That ties their season best mark. 27-16, since Roman Anthony made his debut. I just thought that this was the time to capitalize. And the problem is we keep pushing, it feels like we keep kicking the can down the road as to when the all-in part of this is going to be in effect. On top of that, the Rafael Devers trade, you figure they would allocate the resources in some way to help bolster this major league team, for the stretch run. It's definitely a disappointing feeling today. And that's why I say 1-2, because they did get some guys, but I definitely don't think this is what we expected. And I think this is why we all feel the way we do right now.
So then, Webb, same question. On a hitter's count in which you are the hitter, how would you rate today's trade deadline for the Sox?
I would put it in a 1-3 count. So
wow, we struck out.
You worked a ball. You got 2 guys that marginally help you. But you still struck out at the end of the day by the moves that you didn't make, obviously. You mentioned Merrill Kelly. That seemed like the most obvious and perfect fit in the world. You didn't have to give up the farm like you would for Joe Ryan or Mackenzie Gore or even Dylan Cease or whatever. This is a guy that you can just slot in every 5th day that, will give you 5-6+ innings, keep you in the ball game. And even if it wasn't for that frontline guy, like everybody was hoping for Joe Ryan up until the last minute, that's still a guy that really helps your club. But when you're talking about a guy, in Dustin May, top prospect, has not been on the field really at all throughout his career, and, kind of really getting his first time over 15-16 starts, and it's not going well, and the stuff is down to, like, at what point is that really that much even an improvement over Dick Fitz? Like, I don't even really care about the return that we gave up in it, even though it was probably a little bit heftier than you might imagine for a guy like that. But, you have the prospect capital finally to even, you could have made a huge move. I understand why you might not want to, but you had more than enough pieces in the farm system to get Merrill Kelly or outbid the Rangers for him, or half a dozen other guys that might have been out there. It was only rentals that were traded this year. There was nobody under team control for any of the following seasons that really got dealt from the starting pitcher standpoint, at least. So that's just kind of where everything was at. But I still feel like there's probably a better way that you could have gone in improving it. And, we sat on our hands for trying to make the perfect deal, and we ended up, with just a bologna sandwich at the end of the day. Like, the ingredients were there, but still, like, we just ended up putting ham and cheese on white bread, not even toasting it, and that's our lunch now.
So what surprises me is that you both gave this count a ball. I'm wondering how the Red Sox worked a ball in the deadline, and I'm wondering if in your minds that ball for both of you is Blaze Jordan for Steven Matz.
I didn't hate that one. I didn't hate that deal because with Blaze you'd have to kind of figure out the whole 40-man thing next year. And
Exactly.
yeah, and he seemed like a fun guy to follow. So that I think that's where it hurts. And he's been in the system for a long time too. So we've kind of had him, in our lives since 2020. So I think that's another part of it. And he's been better this year. But you did get another arm for the bullpen, in Matz, who's been there. He's pitched in the playoffs before. And, like as we were talking about before, you look at like the overall stuff. He's had a pretty good year. Like even his expected ERA is better than what his ERA actually is. So I think we all saw that and said, okay, that's not a bad move. That's a move that makes sense. Did it, fire you up in the same way I think other teams feel like when they got relievers, you think about like the guys the Mets got, you think about the guys like the Yankees got, with Bednar and Doval. And, I think that's where that's where the ball comes for me. Like if I get, because they did something, so it's like, okay, it wasn't like they just did absolutely nothing. But it was, again, as we're saying, and like we see Zach in the chats, which is nice to see him chime in. Saying 3-strike count for me. I didn't know that was an option, so maybe I would have gone the same route as Webb. But because 1-3 kind of does.
Jack cheated a little bit.
Yeah,
he cheated.
That's technically a count.
It is technically a count, but I'm sorry, as you were. So maybe you would have given them the 3rd strike after the events of today.
It was. I think it was a deflating day, and you just hope that this team is strong enough to continue the push forward. This is one point I wanted to make. And I was thinking about this before we hopped on. I was actually just talking to one of my coworkers at CBS Boston about this. Is that I know, like, one thing you guys were asking about the calls that I get sometimes. And, one that frustrates me are some of the Alex Cora related calls. And let me explain why. First things first. First things first. We have a lot of people that call in and say, okay, anybody could have managed that 2018 team to a World Series championship. It was an awesome team. I do disagree with that, knowing how much, energy he infused into that team, the great moves he made in the postseason, all that stuff. And same goes for 2021. I feel like he took that team as deep as that they could go. But on top of that, and again, I'm not saying he's not without criticism or whatever, but there are a lot of people that call in and pin the last 2 seasons on him. And my counter to that is that in 2023 and 2024, when we got to the trade deadline, I felt like both, and I'm curious if you guys disagree, but I felt like both of those teams were overperforming to that point. And he made this comment recently about, and he was asked why the team has kind of fallen off since the trade deadline. And he said it's because other teams around us are getting better. And so I look at the last 2 years and the moves that they made that didn't work out or they didn't do enough. And now this year, again, you look at all the wild card teams that are right around the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Mariners, and the Rangers. I haven't even talked about the division leaders yet. Like, they've all made, I think those fan bases feel pretty good about where they're at. If I was a Mariners fan, I'd be feeling awesome about things with some of the big moves that they got. The Rangers too, now with some of the moves that they made. And I think the Yankees, they got some bullpen help. They didn't get like Gino Suarez or any of the really big names, but they got some relief help that I think we probably wish the Sox got. So I just think of that part of all this, because again, now these teams have gotten better. You got to this point where you finally stabilize the ship, and now the teams around you have they, at least on paper, they have bolstered their rosters in a way that I think we all feel like the Sox maybe haven't done.
We're big AC guys over here. I mean, definitely have questioned some of his bullpen choices throughout the year this year. But I don't know, Jack, what do you think? I've always been a big AC guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't name a single other person that would rather have, like, be your manager, especially after having to go through, like, John Farrell, who just hated all the rookies, and before that, Bobby Valentine for a year, and then obviously Tito is probably the greatest manager that we've ever had, but, I'm not sure really what you expect, like, from people or from the team if you did fire Cora, because that really would just go kind of more towards the narrative of FSG of just cutting guys loose just because, really. So I'm not sure you're really gonna find a replacement that you wanted to. You could probably say the same thing happened when you fired Heim and your first 5 choices weren't available and you ended up with Craig Breslow, and now here we are. But yeah, in terms of Alex Cora, they once they extended him, obviously he was going to be here for a while. It's hard to really blame him when you were mentioning, last few years we didn't add at the deadline, everybody else got better, and it felt like this year it was our turn, and it was just kind of the same nothingness again, where everybody else got better around you, and when you're kind of in a fickle spot, yeah,
Big and you had kind of touched on it a bit earlier, Joe, is like there were more resources available to us after the Devers trade, and we did see one of those players get dealt for Dustin May, which is, it doesn't make the Devers trade feel any better. But I was also kind of confused when the story came out today that the Red Sox were kind of dealing with some payroll constraints. They were trying to stay under $9.5–10 million so that they could finish the year under the balance tax, which, as we all remember, is the exact opposite of what they said they were trying to do 5-6 months ago. Were you surprised by the payroll constraints that this team had when looking for the guy that slots in behind Crochet?
Yeah, I think it's just one of these talking points that unfortunately we bring up and have to talk about, because I think dating back to the Mookie decision and that time period,
that's one way to put it, right?
Yeah, like the time period that preceded it, I think it's something that just like it's always going to be circling around this team, and I think and the trade deadline and what's happened today, it sort of falls in line with what this season's been, especially the more recent, stretch that they've had, that they've been playing really well. I think there are a lot of people in this area that really do want to buy into what's going on. And especially when they're like winning. I mean, again, I just rattled off like the record since this, and this. But I think what continuously happens is that there's the angst among the fan base of, okay, are they really going to invest in the team? Or the skepticism regarding some of the decisions. That has not gone away since the Mookie trade. And again, I think today was sort of, unfortunately, another one of these types of days where people are giving ammo to the negative people, not only within the fan base, but I guess people that want to talk about the Red Sox about, okay, are they really trying to win? I do think Craig Breslow was trying to get Joe Ryan. And I think that they were trying to do everything in their power to do it. But again, it didn't work out for whatever reason. It seems as though the Twins, just looking at some of Chris Cotillo's tweets, it seems like the Twins felt like they were it was further away from their vantage point than it was from the Sox's standpoint. And so it does. effort, whatever it is. I mean, so Zach, how much sympathy do you have for Craig Breslow? That's based off of, obviously the quote he gave today. People won't have sympathy for the Sox, I think, because, again, there have been decisions that have been made prior to this, including this season with the Devers thing, which, by the way, I mean, the Sox have been playing well without him. And I do think that there was something to be said about the locker room or the clubhouse. And not that the guys didn't like him, but I think that, you take out some of the conversation surrounding that. It does lighten things up a little bit. So I don't know. I think the point I'm just trying to make is the skepticism will remain after the trade deadline. And I think you read stuff like that. And again, then you see the moves that were made today. The people, for those people, it's going to continue to be valid. And that's where I think the organization's up against sometimes within the fan base, people in this region, based on some of the decisions that have been made over the last 5 years.
Yeah. No, for me, it makes the Devers trade worse. I don't need to rehash all the Mookie stuff. 7 years ago when he was a prospect in that trade too. But for me, it's not necessarily like that we gave up one of the players that we acquired for Devers. It's not even so much that, Jordan Hicks has struggled here and there. He's had some good spots. Kyle Harrison, still in AAA, tweaking on some things. It's that, when you did that, you're trying to sell the fan base that you guys were trying to improve the team this year still. And obviously Devers has not been great in San Francisco, and they've struggled, and the team's done well here. But then it felt like, you kind of have to go all in on that if you truly believe that you're making the ball club better. And when you don't do that, and, you can have all the effort in the world, and you can, reach out to every single team, since they seem to have their, hand in a lot of different pools there. And it's obviously disappointing, but it just, I wish I actually got my hopes up this year. Like, I think that's the difference between this year and the last few years, is like, I was actually expecting, something even a little bit bigger, especially after that. And, you kind of still have to factor, not only like Devers into the trade deadline, but you also, sold a pitcher earlier this year in Quinn Priester, and, he's been looking good for another club too, and you got a draft pick out of it and another outfielder. But, when you're looking at, since, all the transactions that we've made since like the start of the season, it feels more like a negative than a positive at the end of the day.
And we're in a wild card spot, right? Like, I wanted today to go so much better because I feel like we are looking at a competitive team. And to a degree, I feel like even after today, we are still looking at a competitive team. It becomes hard when teams like the Blue Jays and the Yankees, your division rivals, have bolstered their rosters in the way they needed to, with not just one or two guys. Like, they were pulling in 3 guys, 4 guys, Ty France going to the Blue Jays, saying, we have a guy to back up first base for when Vlad needs a day of rest. The Yankees going, we just need to lock down our games, and pulled in 3 or 4 of the best relievers of the game, right? So I look at this Red Sox team and I'm thinking, this is still a competitive team, but this is the team we are riding with. Like, you're getting very little reinforcement. You're going out there and you're continuing to perform. And I think this team, because it's a young team, has a little more stamina than maybe some of the vets do. But I question if the reinforcements that the Red Sox enlisted today for the trade deadline will be enough to keep this team competitive when other teams are going to get more time off their feet heading towards a postseason that would need all of your energy.
And I think that's a fair question. And again, I think so much of it is based on what's happening kind of around where this team is right now. And it's funny. I wonder if, because the clubhouse is so young, not to say there aren't veterans. Obviously there are guys like Trevor Story and Rob Refsnyder. And then if they even think on the pitching side of guys like Walker Buehler and Lucas Giolito that have been in clubhouses and been in winning situations. But I wonder if maybe this won't hit as hard because it's still such a young team, unless, maybe differently than if you had like a group of veterans and they're like, okay, what the heck did the front office do? Not all that much. But I think, again, what's happened around the Sox today leading up to the trade deadline, I think that's where the uneasiness feels right now. Like, I think the uneasiness is, okay, these other teams, they feel like, and I think opposing fans, their fans feel like they genuinely got better. And I think the expectations were so high. I mean, you got, Jack, you were just talking about it. Like, and we were joking about it before we hopped on. My hopes were higher because I feel like this team is real, right? I feel like the last 2 years, and this is my third year doing the pre and post, I feel like the last 2 years, I was, if I'm being honest with myself, I feel like I was talking myself into the teams being legit playoff teams, because you look at last year, they were outperforming what I think we all thought, right? But that we knew in the back of our mind, okay, you got Tanner Houck, his first full season starting, you got Cutter, really being healthy, Cutter Crawford, first full year starting, Bayo was up and down, all that stuff. So I think we kind of knew, all right, we'll see how far this goes. And Craig Breslow he was a soft buy last year, and then none of the moves unfortunately worked out. But I think we kind of knew that team was overperforming. Whereas this year, the expectations were so much higher, and I think rightfully so. Like, they have an ace. They have one of, I think you could conservatively say, I would say top 2 starting pitchers in baseball. But I think if you want to be even more conservative than that, you'd say, okay, top 4 starting pitchers in baseball. Like, Garrett Crochet is incredible. And, like, kudos to Craig Breslow for pulling the trigger on that move. You have Alex Bregman this year, who is awesome when healthy. And they didn't have that type of guy in that clubhouse last year that could lead the way he has and teach as much to the young guys as he already has. They have certain things this year, I think, and of course, like a young stud like Anthony who's been incredible recently. They have things this year that they didn't have the previous 2 seasons, which I think makes this trade deadline more disappointing. I mean, obviously what they got over what we thought could be the case plays into that, but I just feel like this team was real. They've shown that now. Not to say that they aren't flawed, because they have flaws, but they're a lot more real than the previous 2 seasons. And again, especially in this East, like the Blue Jays have had a great season. I don't think they're like some world beater team. The Yankees, obviously, we don't know what Judge's future truly looks like. Like, who's to say the Sox don't surpass them in the near future, even with what happened here at the trade deadline? And same goes for the other divisions. Like, the Tigers have scuffled recently. The West, I mean, I don't know. The Astros, the Mariners, the Rangers now, like, I don't think any of those teams you'd feel like so uncomfortable going up against in a playoff series, which is why I felt like there was such a chance here to really grab a hold of this thing and then propel forward with just some reinforcements that this team needs.
Yeah, I was going to say, I still think this team could make the playoffs.
Still competitive.
Yeah, still
sure.
Competitive. Yeah, there's, like you mentioned, this team feels just more legitimate than the last few seasons, even though the records are still pretty similar to kind of where we've been at. But it kind of feels like we took our chances of actually making a deep October run to the ALCS, to the World Series, maybe even winning the AL East, since it is still kind of wide open. And, now you're kind of hoping just to make the song and dance. Like, it feels like the expectations for this team could have gone so much differently, just with a few even different moves today. Obviously, that, we've talked about, with another starting pitcher, maybe another backup catcher, even though it's lower on the totem pole and everything. And you see how the other teams actually kind of bolster up. So you would like to see, the young guys like Roman and Sadon and, maybe Myers back even. Maybe Christian Campbell's up later in this year. You want to have these guys, grow up with this postseason mentality that obviously Alex Bregman's been, teaching them very like the right direction and how to play the game and everything. And, you're kind of wasting a year of learning that experience by not going all in. And, not we'll see what this team does in September and October, but you could have decided your own destiny a lot easier than by just doing a few things differently, and that sucks.
Did you wear a Dodgers jersey on purpose?
This is not a Dodgers jersey now.
Gasp.
Yeah.
You're just wearing a blue 30 jersey for fun?
Well, it kind of is, since this is from an ex-coworker, but it's a Sandlot jersey.
Oh,
so,
see, that's amazing.
Yeah, number 30. Yeah, little Benny the Jet
Benny
Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so who became a Dodger, but he was
who did become a Dodger. Yeah, so that is a good point. Yeah.
No, that's a sick jersey.
Yeah.
Wow. I am impressed. What did your watch?
Yeah,
just
no,
say,
my
so?
Siri heard all that and was just like, "Oh yeah, thank you." So,
well,
yeah, I couldn't wear a Red Sox jersey today. I didn't have it in me.
I thought you were wearing a Dodgers jersey to celebrate our Dustin May signing.
No,
I don't know if I'd call it a celebration. To recognize.
I wonder how it's gonna look.
Signing.
Don't you guys kind of wonder how it's like he's gonna look in a Sox jersey, because he's got the red hair and everything, so like maybe it'll look cool.
He'll look like an Irishman for sure.
Yeah, like Justin
I feel like
Turner.
it might be too much. Like I feel like it's gonna look good in the new City Connect jerseys, like with the green at Fenway. Yeah. Like he looks like he could just be any other dude on the street, which is great. I always love dudes like that. So I want to try to get excited about him a little bit, but maybe we get something out of him, but it's not even like you get a guy from like the Pirates, like Mitch Keller, and you're like, oh, we can tweak a few things and everything. Like the Dodgers are already doing all of that. The Dodgers are the team that gets those guys and fixes them. So he was kind of just more like one of those dudes where they have struggled with a lot of starting pitchers this year. Blake Snell is coming back, and they have Tyler Glasnow now, so it feels like more of a guy they were just trying to get rid of, and they actually got like a pretty good return in for, because we kind of got desperate at the last minute there.
Yeah, you think James Tibbs III and Zach Earhart? Do you think that's a fair trade for Dustin May?
Not really, but I don't care that much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw a lot of people get upset about Tibbs. His numbers have not been good with the Sea Dogs, but obviously you have the first round pedigree to it. And Earhart, he had a really nice start to the season. The numbers have dipped since gone to Double-A, which obviously makes sense. I'm actually not too upset about it either. Although I did enjoy. I just posted this clip. Like I got a chance to catch up with Tibbs roughly a month and a half ago, and he was awesome. It was great to talk to him, and he talked about how excited he was to be a member of this organization, and you knew that this could be a possibility, like that he could be flipped again. But it was fun catching up with him, and it was fun. He was actually talking about when he got traded. He's like, okay, who did I get traded for? And then he saw it was Devers, and he's like, I got to make sure I don't look at the comments because I don't want to get my feelings hurt. So I wish it was great catching up with him, but I did. So I wish him well, with Los Angeles. Obviously, we hope May though is good from our standpoint and can deliver, because it's interesting too. Is like he stayed healthy this year. His velo is down from the 4-seam fastball, like the fastball part of it. He obviously throws a sweeper a ton. But he's also, from an inning standpoint, he's thrown more this year than he has since 2019. Like it's the first time he's gone over 100 innings since 2019, if you combine minor league and major league pitching. So that's where I get, from where we are now, that's where I get a little bit concerned.
Yeah, he's hit his workload, and I was looking at that too, and I was like, do we need another guy who's hitting their innings workload? Like, is this the guy that's going to convince you to push Garrett Crochet back a day? I don't hate his stuff. Like there was definitely a time when Dustin May was the next big thing, and then it kind of plateaued, and then injury history. And this year, very, very pedestrian numbers. He has an 8.5 strikeout per 9. He has a little over a 21% K rate. Really great ground ball rate, and really great just like keeping the ball in play rate. But I feel like his stats look the same as the same 4 and 5 pitchers we've been trying to sneak into our rotation for 3 years, 4 years now. There was definitely a bit of deflation hearing that half an hour to go, we're going to put all our energy to Joe Ryan, and then 5:50 you get Dustin May, and I hope he is great. Just not the caliber of pitcher that I think any of us were really looking for.
Well, and I think to your point, Ian, I think what we were hoping for was the certainty part of it, right? That you were getting a guy that has already put up good numbers this year. You think of like a Mitch Keller, right? Like he's had a good season, or Merrill Kelly for that matter too, you know. So like I think with May, it's kind of talking yourself into it, and what's interesting is we've already done that with two separate pitchers this year that the Sox signed, and Lucas Giolito and Walker Buehler. And Giolito, to his credit, has pitched a lot better recently, and he's actually I think overall he's been what you could have hoped for after a tough start. With Buehler, it's still a work in progress, I think, putting it nicely, you know. And even Alex Cora after the last start said that he was ineffective, and you know, just being there at Fenway just wasn't getting enough chase. Obviously, they had a tough time putting it in the zone too, which has just happened too often, and especially for a guy that, you know, his stuff is down. And that's as I was saying with May. I mean, again, that the fastball's had a couple ticks down in velocity since 2023. That's another concern. And I think that just plays into it too. You want more certainty, obviously, when you're in this spot. Again, when you're in a playoff spot and playing as well as the Sox have been.
I totally agree with that. I'm hoping for the best we can get out of Dustin May, because I think this team still has a chance at a playoff run, and hopefully Dustin May is an integral part of this team being a playoff team this year. The thing I really want to highlight for both of you is the pattern this year has followed in line with recent years, and that the most glaring things surrounding our trade deadline was the non-moves. And there's a huge emphasis on this year's non-moves because classic Red Sox king of interest, right? If I go through the list of our non-moves, you know, there was obviously Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly. There was Alcantara, Joe Ryan, Mitch Keller, Dylan Cease, Ryan O'Hearn, Eugenio Suarez, Dalton Rushing. All names that would have made this team definitively better tomorrow. And Breslow went on his press conference after the trade deadline and said other teams needed to like our offers. They need to like our players. So with all of these glaring and frustrating non-moves from today, where do you think we fell short in our offers to other teams that just wasn't getting deals done?
It's a fair question, and I'm actually really, that's one of the many things after today, like I'm so interested to learn more about, you know, what it was that the Sox were offering. I wonder from the Twins standpoint, because Duran was seemingly off the table, if the guys that the Sox were trying to trade from within the system were enough to get Joe Ryan. You figure that I'm just speculating. I have no intel on this, but like you think of the guys at the top, like Tole, you know, the Password, Arias, you know, like those top three guys. You even wonder if those three would have been enough, and then if you try to even add more onto that, because the Sox, like some of the guys on the NESN trade deadline special were talking about this, like. If you're going to be a contending team, it doesn't make a ton of sense to deal away a piece of your team that you really need. And with Duran, prior to the Meyer injury, it made more sense to package him in a deal. But I had been saying this on the airwaves, and you heard me talk about this on Sunday. Like,
right.
I'm like, I don't know why you would trade Duran at this point. We don't know when Meyer's coming back, and not to mention he's been swinging the bat. And we've talked about the Devers trade. One thing I've worried about a little bit is with Devers gone, what happens with this team offensively when they face better pitching. And Duran's been the guy that's been hitting, you know, recently. And that's in part why he's in the 3 spot. So I just wonder when they were going after Ryan, if the stuff that they had internally, and Craig Breslow talked about this in his presser too. Like it seems like it just wasn't enough to get that big piece, and especially when they're not going to be tapping into the big three. At this point, they're not dealing Anthony. Myers hurt, and I think this team still feels really highly on Christian Campbell, which I don't blame him at all, because if people are selling Christian Campbell stock, I want to buy it. I know obviously it's tough start to the year, but like I'm still a fan of his, and he's been swinging it a lot better. So anyway, I just think that for certain pieces, what they were willing to deal internally from the minor leagues wasn't enough for somebody like Ryan. Again, this is me speculating. And then I wonder, we'll find out about Kelly and Suarez and some of these other guys who they were willing to deal from those collection of minor league players. But there's a good chance that I think these teams just didn't feel as highly about what the Sox have compared to what other organizations have. Now, I do think there were some bullpen pieces that the Sox could have tried to get that they had the prospect capital to do it, but maybe they just weren't willing to deal that away for like a Bednar or Doval, and that's why they kind of got stuck in this in-between spot where they get Matz because they're willing to deal away Blaze Jordan for that, but and then May with these other two prospects, but nobody else from the pile because they maybe felt like what they were going to get back wasn't worth what they were willing to give, which I'd be willing to hedge a little bit at this point and maybe overpaying a little bit from a prospect standpoint. Because again, what we're talking about right now, I think at some point you just have to move forward and invest in this team, which I think has shown to this point that they're worthy of doing that.
Yeah. Jack, I mean, same thing for you. Like, where do you think we fell short in our offers today? And is there a particular non-move or missed move that really hurt the most for you?
Yeah, so I think there was a lot of balls being juggled between a lot of, different starting pitchers. Only a handful of bats really would have made a lot of sense for the Red Sox. I'm not going to lose a ton of sleep over that, even if it is Romy or Toro or Campbell there later on in the year and you don't know about Marcelo in the outfield and yada, yada, yada. But in terms of, our approach to everything, it did feel like we were waiting for the perfect move. Obviously, I think Breslow could have said it in a lot better way. It takes two to tango, essentially. His public speaking is somehow just god awful. It makes him miss Heim, where he at least was reassuring and you could see the outline, and even if you didn't agree with it, he didn't fumble over himself a lot. So I think, the Red Sox obviously have a long history of really valuing a lot of their young guys. We haven't had a lot of, starting pitching in the minor leagues. I know for a fact that the Red Sox organization is over the moon about Peyton Tolley, and it kind of seemed like once, the lights were coming on at the end of the night at the bar and you start seeing, your backup of Merrill Kelly go home with another guy, and then all of a sudden, you're trying to convince the Twins that oh yeah, no, Peyton Tolley's available now, and you only have 30 minutes to kind of make that all work. It really feels like he was kind of, just sleeping on his pillow, me, right up until the perfect time, and it backfired. And I'm sure, obviously he has to say X, Y, and Z to the press, but I'm sure he's going home feeling super disappointed. And, hopefully it's a learning opportunity, because he's probably not going anywhere since you have had all that turnover at the GM position or whatever you want to call it nowadays. But it just feels like, they messed up. They did not execute the plan that they wanted, and then their backup plans didn't even work out after that. So you had plan A, B, and C, and it probably was plan Q that you went with at the end of the day.
Well, actually, I want to just jump in too, because just bringing up Heim, it's funny because I don't know if he had a trade deadline that people unequivocally felt good about. Now, I agree that he was very open and it's funny sometimes the messaging, and JP Ricciardi was talking about this on the NESN the trade deadline special. Like they were talking after Craig Breslow came on, and he conceded like, yeah, he's in a tough spot right now because obviously he's disappointed about everything. But I think it's funny too because I felt like with Heim, like even when they got Kyle Schwarber, people were pissed off because like, yeah, he wasn't a first baseman and he was also hurt, so people are like, you know, that's the, and they got Robles. I know they got Robles and Davis too, but like, you know, they like the people were pissed at him too. It unless you, it's funny because I think even if you do the right things like Heim, I think we all would feel like in 2022, you know, like he and we have Zach chiming in with closing time, which made me laugh.
Closing time. Yeah.
One, that's great song. Great chime in there, Zach. But I think what's funny too with Heim because I don't feel like he ever won any of the pressers after the trade deadline either. Because even with 2022, he makes that brilliant deal to trade Christian Vasquez and you get Wilyer Abreu back. People are still pissed, and I can understand that. And then 23, the same thing. I think people feel like he didn't do enough. But this one, I think the point you're trying to make is I think it feels different, and I would agree.
I mean, I know we're nearing the end of our hour here. With the Twins flash sale today, which kind of surprised me a little bit, they dealt a lot more than I thought they would. Do you feel like Joe Ryan was our biggest miss of the day, or do you feel like Joe Ryan was our highest aspiration and there was another move that we could have or should have made that ultimately was not done?
Well, I think he was our highest aspiration, and it seems like the Sox did everything in their power, which I know people probably don't want to hear, but I do think that they did everything in their reasonable power, it seems like, to try to get him. I just think in the end, the pieces probably weren't there to get it done. And you could blame Craig Breslow for that, but I it seems as though they were going all in on that. And to answer the second part, Ian, I think that what they should have done was get somebody like Merrill Kelly, like get a rental guy who's pitched in the postseason that's had a good year. And that would have, because we talk about, okay, what does the playoff rotation look like? I think the first three, we feel, obviously Crochet, we feel amazing about, and it's such a luxury to have a guy like that go in game one. And who knows, maybe you could throw him in game 4 or something like that. But Bayo's been really good. He's got a 3.19. Giolito's been a lot better. You just would have liked to have a fourth starter that you felt really good about right now. And I think the problem is coming out of today, we don't necessarily feel that way. And that was the hope going into a day like this, is that they would have had that figured out and that rotation would have been solidified when you lined it up looking at, you know, a postseason series.
Was it Joe Ryan or someone else for you, Jack, that you felt like we needed?
I agree. The name I just keep coming back to is Merrill Kelly.
It's got to be Merrill Kelly, right?
I would have even taken Shane Bieber. I wasn't huge on a lot of these like reclamation project pitchers, since I feel like we've been doing that a lot. You know, I was not interested in Sandy, especially with the uncertainty with everything. And, you know, you have Garrett Crochet, you know, reaching a workload. You already see them starting to adjust some of his starts. You've seen them, like, you know, stop him at 75, 80 pitches. And, you know, when you're actually factoring not only for the rest of the year, but also for October for a guy like that, you know, you would have liked to have a little bit more stability than a guy that, you know, has made 52 career starts over 7 years. Like, that's
most of them this year.
Yeah, most of which are this year. So it felt like there could have been any number of moves that probably would have made me feel at least a little better, and say like, yeah, maybe it was like a C instead of like a D- or F territory, honestly, because that's kind of what it feels like.
It's Merrill Kelly.
Yeah.
That is the guy that I felt like Red Sox fans were looking at all day, and they were like, you know what, 2 months of Merrill Kelly, here's a reliable, durable guy with decent performance that we can take to the end of the year, to the postseason. It was Merrill Kelly for me, and for a lot of people, I think, that would have put this team in a more confident place to win it. I would have loved to get Joe Ryan, but we all knew that was a lofty goal, especially if you're not giving up Duran or Abreu. I wanted Merrill Kelly for 2.5 months so bad. Like, I'm sure we all did.
And the Rangers, it's a huge ad for them because they have guys in their rotation that have innings limits. And you were starting to see what the Sox are doing with Crochet and making sure he gets extra rest now for his starts, which is the right move. I mean, it is 1,000% the right move. But yeah, those rentals in Arizona. I even think Gallen, even though he hasn't had a good year, like you could have talked yourself into that one too, just because of the postseason stuff a couple years ago. But you were hoping to at least grab one of them, and then like Dylan Cease too in a vacuum would have been nice. But the Padres made some. I mean, they were wheeling and dealing all freaking day.
They were their own story.
Yeah,
weren't they?
I still can't believe that Mason Miller trade.
Yeah.
Like that was absolutely ridiculous. But
they're the team I look at in particular today, and I'm like, did we not have the prospect capital that outranks the Padres prospect capital? Like, look at all the moves they're making today.
DeVries, nobody the Sox have, I think, would compare to him. And that was what people have been saying about, if the Sox are going to trade Duran, okay, you get Cease back, you'd have to include him because otherwise, and even then, I don't know, with where the Sox are at, it probably isn't worth it.
Agreed.
Again, you still need Duran right now.
You definitely do. I feel we're all pretty disappointed with what we saw today. You got some stuff. The big question is it enough stuff? And most people are feeling like not really. To kind of summarize our disappointing trade deadline for the day. And I'm sure they're feeling that in the office as well. But as we're kind of reaching our hour mark here, the end of our episode, Joe, first of all, it's been a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. It's been fun.
At the end of every episode, what we do is I'll have some kind of game or creative approach or question for our buddy Jack Webster here. I would love for you to participate in it as well in our end of episode game as we prepare to sign off. The game for tonight is a trade. And it is a CBO, or Chief Baseball Officer, President of Baseball Operations trade. The easy mode is to make a trade with the current Red Sox head of baseball operations and another team's current head of baseball operations. And hard mode is a 3-team trade between the Red Sox current president of baseball operations and 2 other teams' current president of baseball operations. So CBO swap, easy mode for 1, hard mode for 2.
Yeah, I'm going to go the easy mode here first. I am bringing back Dave Dombrowski tomorrow. Dave Dombrowski with the...
He was awesome again today.
He always is.
Dave Dombrowski with this farm system would make us 2018 again. Like, it would be absolutely wild. Obviously, you see a lot of the moves that he made of prospects that he traded away in a lot of those deals that really didn't end up panning out. And, the farm system probably wasn't as bad as people seem or tried to make it be when he left. So I'd bring him back. You might mortgage your future, but I'm perfectly okay with that after being kind of mediocre for the last 3 years. So I was willing to trade just about anybody today.
Wow.
And Dave would have done it.
That's your 1-for-1 is Breslow for Dombrowski. Do you have a 3-team trade in mind for your CBOs?
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and do a 3-team trade. So I'm going to give the Craig Breslow to the Dodgers.
Okay. And
then I'm going to go ahead and give Andrew Freeman, I believe who it is, just like a random team. I'm going to give him to the Pirates. So that way he can go ahead and just sell off, Paul Skeens and everybody else. And you know what? I'll bring back Ben Cherington. He at least was silly and he was fine. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's a unique...
Yeah. Actually, I'm not bringing
CBO
back
trade.
Ben Cherington. I'm DFAing him, but whatever, yeah.
Sure, but you're dealing Breslow to the Dodgers so the Dodgers can
I'm doing it in reverse. I'm doing it in reverse where I'm trading Breslow to the Pirates. I'm giving the Dodgers Ben Cherington so that way they can start being bad, and then I'm getting Andrew Freeman back. So I'm doing it in reverse.
Really following through on the spirit of the game.
Yeah.
In that 3-team trade.
I'm making other people worse while making us better.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
that's the goal.
Yeah.
Joe, same game, same question. Do you have a 1-for-1 CBO swap that you would do for today's trade deadline? And do you have a 3-team CBO swap for today's trade deadline?
Ooh. Well, I don't want to be a copycat because I also love Dealin' Dave. And he
I know I can't look past that. I feel like that's a great pick, but there are others out there. I'm sure, Joe, you've had some come to mind.
Others on the table, and I'm trying to think of. I think 1-for-1. Let's go Friedman. All right, because he's somehow he's the sustainability thing. Which
winner.
Yeah, the winner and the sustainability thing. I think is the craziest thing. How about what if we send Breslow to the Padres and we send Preller to the Yankees to make things pretty crazy? But that would mean we'd get Cashman. So I don't know if that would work.
True, yeah.
And then maybe Cashman to the Phillies and then Dombrowski to the Sox. How do we feel about that? I know it's 4.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, the more the merrier. Everybody just shifts over one.
Yeah, shooting for the start. That'd be a really interesting approach. What if all baseball teams shifted their chief baseball officer every 2 to 4 years? They have term limits, so they have to move to a new team at the end of any given time.
And they have to get elected.
God. Yeah, like Breslow did.
Well, and it's funny too because there's some guys around the league. You're just like, how have they been in their jobs this long? You know, but you know, job security. I guess you can't hit on it too much.
Yeah, like the Yankees haven't done anything in 15, 16 years, and it's the same dude.
We are a hate podcast, and Brian Cashman is a bona fide loser. But by all means, keep him. He's all yours, please. Joe, I can't reiterate enough how much of a pleasure it was to have you on, and thank you, Zach, for tagging us all in the same post and helping with the catalyst to get this together. But Joe, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and please come by anytime.
Yeah, let the people know where to find yourself.
You can find me at Joe_Weil. Be on pre and post this weekend, so Saturday and Sunday. And no, thanks for having me, guys. It's been fun chatting, and call in whenever you need me again. You know where to find me now, and hoping for the best here moving forward. I know again today was a little disappointing, but I'm hoping we still have a fun stretch here down the road. We got Roman Anthony up, which has been awesome, and keep tuning into WEI. And thanks for having me on again, guys. Appreciate it.
Of course. You have a great evening.
Thanks, guys.
Go Sox. Yeah.
Okay, love you.
No,
I
I
love
do.
you. Okay, love you. Bye. No, I love you. Okay, love you.
Thanks, Brez, you